What's up, my comic comrades? After many delays, The Eternals finally hits theaters this weekend. So today, we're breaking down their comic book history to get you ready for the occasion. I, for one, am very excited / curious to see this movie, as I have a feeling it's going to be a very important piece for the MCU's past and future. It's also the second longest MCU movie to date, with a 2-hour and 37-minute runtime. So clearly, they have some things they need to show and say. And whatever that is, Tim and I will be giving our thoughts and opinions about it on next week's podcast. So make sure to join us there too. If you're not already a subscriber to Variant the Podcast, you could change that by clicking our link right here or in the description below. Anyway, let's dive into the history of the Eternals. The Eternals first appeared in The Eternals issue 1 in July of 1976. They were created by the one and only Jack Kirby. Now, 6 years earlier in 1970, Jack Kirby left Marvel Comics to go work for DC Comics. At DC Comics, he would create and begin his work with the New Gods, which ended up being one of the coolest aspects of the DC universe, giving us characters like the Allfather, Orion, Mr. Miracle, Big Barda, and of course, Darkseid. But unfortunately, Kirby didn't get to finish his New Gods series after its cancellation, leaving it incomplete. So years later, when Kirby returned to Marvel, he started working on the Eternals, which is yet another original concept by Kirby that deals with cosmic gods. Essentially, he wanted to do something very similar to the New Gods, but obviously couldn't bring them with him because DC already owned it. So he created the Eternals, which is basically Marvel's version of the New Gods. Similar in a lot of ways, but also very different. Now, originally, Kirby named the Eternals title the Celestials, but Marvel was like, nope, we're gonna change it to Return of the Gods. But after Marvel's legal department thought the title was too similar to Eric Von Daniken's book Chariot of the Gods, it was changed one last time to the Eternals, which is how we know them today. But with that little bit of their real world history out of the way, let's take a look at their comic book origin. Before I start talking away, I do want to say, if you watched our Origin of the Deviants episode, you already heard this origin because the Eternals and the Deviants origin is one and the same. With that said, we're only going to go over the 2006 modern origin for the Eternals, as it's most likely the one they will be pulling from in the movie, as the trailer gives us some indication of that already. However, if you would like to hear the original Jack Kirby origin, fret not, because we got you covered as we went over that one in our Origin of the Eternals episode, which you could find right here. Anyway, as for the one the MCU will be pulling from, it comes from the 2006 Eternals miniseries. In issue 1, Arris gives us the Eternals, Deviants, and Humans' origin while healing from a bomb explosion he just survived because he's an Eternal. Anyway, he tells us, I don't know what the Celestials are. If I ever knew, I don't remember. There are a few things I do remember. I don't know if they came to Earth once or 100 times before the modern age. Zurus believed they had. If you don't know who Zurus is, he's the leader of the first generation of the Eternals. Anyway, Arris goes on to say, Zurus told me once that he believed the Celestials had seeded the whole planet with life. Maybe there was once dinosaur civilizations. You ever wonder where they really went 65 million years ago? I wonder if it's some cosmic game the Celestials play over and over. Deviants, Eternals, Humans. This is what happened the way I remember it. They came here over 500,000 years ago, maybe 1 million. They were bigger than you could imagine, bigger than giants. And then they chose the proto-people, early hominids, that bore the same resemblance to humans that wolves do to Great Danes. Humans were simpler then, smaller, stupider, but the Celestials saw the potential, knew what one day they could grow into. The Celestials built machines. My friend Ajax, he could talk to the gods directly, mind to mind. He spent centuries trying to figure out how the machines worked. Ajax said they were like nanocircuits, only the other way around. Macro circuits maybe. Big rocks that do magic, real magic. They made Eternals, as we see the Celestials throw handfuls of proto-people into one of their machines. We then see the Celestials' real magic tear apart and rearrange one of the proto-people, turning them into an Eternal. Arris goes on to say, I was made by the Celestials. It's like the arguments about the intelligent design. I know my designers were intelligent. I just don't know what they wanted from me. They made about 100 of us, and then they made the Deviants. He tells us, imagine a race of people, none of whom was even of the same species, each with a different look, attribute, and shape. Every member of the deviant race was a fresh roll of the genetic dice. They kind of got out of hand, bred like rabbits, and were smarter than whips. Pretty soon, they ruled the world, millions of them all so different, as we see them enslave the humans. The comic goes on to say, we left them alone until they stopped leaving us alone. They wanted to take us apart and see how we worked. Arris says, we the Eternals had to learn how to fight, and we had to do it fast, and we did. Turned out, we've been built for that as well. As we get panels of the 100 Eternals fighting the millions of Deviants. Arris says, but it wasn't a war that we could win. Still, we knew how to call them. They left us that knowledge, and when the time came, we called, referring to the Celestials, and they came from space, the second horde. The Deviants fought back, but it was like a cloud of gnats going up against an armored car. Within days, the Deviants were defeated. Their lands were destroyed and lost beneath the Pacific Ocean. They were reduced to a few thousand survivors and have never again regained their numbers. Icarus continues to tell us the humans, now freed from the deviant slavery, were able to grow and flourish. The Eternals, my people, we helped the humans by encouraging them and inspiring them. We taught them to plant grain. We showed them how to work metals. We all had different talents and skills, and we used them quietly, selectively, to help build the human race, which is what we also see them doing in the Eternals trailer. And then 30 years ago, the Celestials came back to judge humanity as once they had judged the Deviants, the third horde. I don't really remember all of it after that. There's stuff that's kind of cloudy in my mind, but just like that, we have the Eternals' modern origin. So now it's time for story arcs and publication history. Now, if you didn't know, there isn't a whole lot of Eternals content out there. They are nowhere near as prolific as someone like Spider-Man or Captain America. But they have had several series over the years. First one being their original Jack Kirby's Eternal series from 1976, which lasted for 19 issues and 1 annual. It's in this series Kirby lays down the origin and foundation for the Eternals, Deviants, and Celestials. Everything to come after this involving those 3 races was established here. You could say this first Eternal series is the Bible for all things Eternals, Deviants, and Celestials that followed. The series starts off with archaeologist Daniel Damian and his daughter Margaret, who are deep in the God Chamber, where they learn their assistant Arris is actually the Eternal Icarus. When he reveals his true self, he breaks down the Eternals, Deviants, and humans' origin to them, and also says he must activate the cosmic beacon deep within the God Chamber. But the Deviants Crow and his brother Toad have another plan for Icarus in mind. After this series ended with 19 issues, writers Roy Thomas and Mark Gruenwald used the Eternals in one of their Thor stories from Thor issue 283 to 301, which has been dubbed Thor and the Eternals, the Celestial Saga. The story focuses on Thor confronting his father Odin with questions about Ragnarok, his mother, and the massive threat the cosmic beings known as the Celestials. But of course, Odin doesn't want to tell his son the truth, so instead of just opening up to him, he sent Thor on a quest for answers. Basically saying, figure it out for yourself. So Thor sets out on a journey which brings him face to face with the Eternals, who reveal a long hidden secret in the Marvel Universe, or secrets. And with that, the stage is set for a war between the gods. It's a really good story, an easy entry to the Eternals, because you have a familiar face like Thor kind of guiding you. The story also flushes out the Eternal, Celestials, and Deviants origin, as Jack Kirby wasn't able to finish out his entire story. By the time 1985 rolled around, the Eternals received a 12-issue miniseries from Peter B. Gillis and artist Sal Buscema. In this series, the Unimind, which is a collective organism that is created when the Eternals all merge together, along with the Death, set the stage for a new battle between the godlike Eternals and Deviants. We learn that the Eternals have spread out among the human population in secret, and their leader must hold all the remaining Eternals together as their new enemy Gower rises from the deep within the Deviants' underground stronghold. And we find out that if the Eternals can't stop Gar, he will end up possessing the cosmic power of a dreaming Celestial, which will lead to him conquering the Earth. Fast forward to the year 2000, we would get a one-shot titled Eternals Apocalypse Now. Essentially, in this one-shot, we see a feud between the Eternals and X-Men villain Apocalypse. After this, in 2006, we got the extremely popular Neil Gaiman and artist John Romita Jr. Eternals miniseries. Actually, I already went over the first issue of this series, as that's where we're given their modern origin. So this miniseries is actually probably the most relevant one to read, as I feel like the Eternals movie will be pulling from this the most. Either way, it's just a really good story. I mean, it's done by Neil Gaiman with art from John Romita Jr. In this 7-issue miniseries, the Eternals are awakening one by one from a strange waking dream, and they must come to terms with the fact that they are extremely far from normal people that they thought themselves to be. In fact, they're part of an eternal race. No matter how you slice it, it's a great modern take on the Eternals and their backstory. Although, I am a purist, so you know I'm still all about that Jack Kirby one, but this new one is good too. From here, we get the 2008 Eternals series, which only lasted 9 issues. It's a pretty good series where we get to see the Eternals interact with a good amount of other Marvel heroes. And yet again, it deals with Marvel's past and creation and how important the Eternals' role is in all of that. This brings us all the way to 2021, the newest Eternals series. Now, I haven't read this series, but it does look promising from everything I've heard and seen from it. Plus, in issue 2, Icarus comes face to face with the Mad Titan himself, Thanos. I do also know one of the 100 Eternals is murdered, and the Eternals have to find out who is going around murdering their own kind. But lastly, we have the newest Eternals book, Eternals Forever issue 1, which just came out on October 13th. In it, we see Icarus has been captured by the Deviants and has been brainwashed into assassinating fellow Eternal, Ajax. And now it's up to Icarus's fellow Eternals to stop him and clear his mind to prevent an all-out war between the Deviants and Eternals. But just like that, my comic comrades, it's time for some powers and abilities. The Eternals are essentially gods, so their powers are pretty vast and incredible, but vary from eternal to eternal. Their body cells contain cosmic energy, and they maintain constant control over every molecule of their bodies. Also, like their namesake, they're virtually immortal and can be restored to life even if their molecules of their bodies have been scattered. As a standard, all Eternals possess the capacity for superhuman strength, flight, telepathy, teleportation, illusion casting, transmutation of organic and inorganic matter, and the generation of various forms of energy from their bodies, including force, heat, light, and other electromagnetic radiation. Yeah, they're kind of nuts and crazy OP. Now, with the Eternals having all these powers, they usually choose to specialize on one particular power, which in turn makes them an expert in that power, but makes their other powers a little weaker. What's also crazy and kind of nuts is how they have complete control over their molecules. This grants them abilities like shapeshifting, healing, and a bunch more. But to run down their powers a little more simplified, they have such abilities like accelerated healing, reincarnation, which means they'll just be reincarnated and brought back to life, but they also have super strength, which the amount of said strength varies from Eternal. Projection blast, flight, telepathy, teleportation, transmutation, and force fields. Basically, there's almost nothing the Eternals can't do, because they're essentially the embodiment of living cosmic energy and gods in their own right. With that said, it's time to move on to reading recommendations. Check out The Eternals by Jack Kirby, the complete collection, Eternals by Gaiman and Romita Jr., Eternals Slay the God, Thor and the Eternals The Celestial Saga, and The Eternals from 2021. That should be enough to get you all started. First up for the week of November 3rd, we have Superman 78 Issue 3. In order to save Metropolis, Superman must surrender to Brainiac or watch his city burn to the ground. After being taken aboard Brainiac's ship, Superman finds a shocking piece of his past that changes his entire future. Next up, we have Teen Titans Academy Issue 7, Gorilla Grodd vs. Gorilla Greg. A fun light outing to upstate New York for the students of Titans Academy becomes a nightmare when the entire town turns on them. Third on our list is Static Season 1, Issue 4. The Dakota crackdown comes for Static's friends. As the government cracks down on the superpowered teenage bang babies, Dakota's schools are getting emptier and emptier, and with someone he loves in the sights of the roundup, Static must put his own life and family at risk to protect them. Next up, we have Strange Academy presents The Death of Doctor Strange Issue 1. Strange Academy is closed until the events surrounding Doctor Strange's death are resolved, so the students have to go back to their parents. And finally, we have Batman Issue 116. The only thing standing between an insane, heavily armed Peacekeeper 01 and a high body count in Gotham City is Batman. Their first bout didn't go well for the Dark Knight, but the city is on the line and he can't let the Scarecrow's master plan come to fruition. And whose side is Miracle Molly truly on? And that's gonna bring today's episode of Variant to a close, but if you like today's episode, check out that one right here to my left, your right. And if you like all of our content, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. It always helps the channel out. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things comics.